Hello and welcome to another Digital Photo Mentor video. I'm Darlene. Today I'm going to show you the brand new Luminar AI interface and give you a few quick tips on how to get started. How to quickly take your images from something like this one to this with only a few clicks. Let's get started. When you first get started with Luminar AI, it works very similar to previous versions of Luminar. So if you're familiar with Luminar 4 or 2018, you add your images the same way. Just click on this little plus sign here. If you're new to Luminar, just follow along and I'm going to add a folder of images so you can see how to import. Just click the little plus sign at the top here next to catalog and then choose add folder with images. Now, if I've already selected one, this is a set of sky images that I'm working on to create a new sky pack, which is something you'll be able to use in Luminar when you get into sky replacements. And I may use one of these as an example in a future video. Okay, so really quickly, you could see what happened is it indexed those images and they are now added, and you can see them here on the right under the folders panel. You can also see that I've got something called albums. Okay, so this is the catalog panel at the top, and inside the catalog you see the actual folders. So these are where your images reside on your hard drive, the actual images. And then you see something down below called albums. So I've created an album with a few images for this particular tutorial, and I've just put them into this little section here. So they may live in different folders on your hard drive, but you could put them into an album, say, of all your best flower pictures or something like that. Okay, so inside the catalog section here, you can do things like flag your images, you can save them as a pick. These ones are all picked or favorited. So if I choose my favorites, oh, you can see a couple of went away. So I can see that the ones that are unmarked are these two. So if I wanted to add one as a favorite, I simply can just click this little heart here, and now it's added as a favorite. Or I can click the P key, which makes it a pick. Okay, now I can go back to favorites and you can see that they're all selected. So that's a handy way for you to sort of indicate which ones you want to work on or which ones are your indeed favorites. And they'll also get added into a little section up here of all your favorites. So if there's any others that you've favorited from different folders, notice these ones here, they will show up under favorites here. So you can sort by the last things you've edited. I was working on these folders and images here. You can see they're all different. You can sort by single image edits if you're adding those, or if you've lost any edits from previously, you have a chance to get them back here. So for today, I'm just going to work on this album, and we're going to start with this image that I showed you the before and after. So this is the original raw file. This is a Fuji RAF file, and Luminar AI handles them very well. So this is the after. So I've previously processed this one in Luminar 4, and I wanted to show you how quickly I can get to this result using Luminar AI and some of the new features like templates. So let's start there. You'll notice up at the top, there are some new things now. You'll see catalog, and then you see templates, edit, and export. Please note that if you're using this as a plugin, you're not going to see export. So if you've taken your images from, say, Lightroom or Photoshop or another program into Luminar, you will not see the export button. You will see apply instead, in which case you will apply any edits you've made in Luminar and it will take you back to the software you started from. New to Luminar AI are templates. Previously, if you've used Luminar 4, you will recognize them. They're very similar to what was previously called looks. And prior to that, they were actually called presets, which is very similar to what they're called in Lightroom. So templates work very similar to presets or looks, but what they do, they've taken it a step farther with the AI or the artificial intelligence here inside of Luminar AI to actually make some suggestions for you based on what the program thinks is in the image or what the program thinks is the content or the subject of your image. Okay, so up at the top here, it's recommending for this photo. So you could see that it's recommended a scenery set, easy landscapes, or even urban style. So it's recognized that there's a building. It's recognized that there's some landscape. Let's try this one here. So just click on the collection and then you can see how quickly they apply to the image just by selecting it. I like this one called Fast Fix. So it adds a bunch of color, it adds a nice punch, right? And pick the one that is going to be sort of the closest to what you envision for this image. If you haven't got a vision for this image, just scroll through them and see what they do, right? So I'm just quickly sort of going through all of these. Oh, that one's very nice as well, right? And it's adding lots of color. Maybe this one is less color, a black and white. So choose the one that you like the best if you haven't got any sort of vision for your image. Now, I seem to like, the one that I liked the best was this Fast Fix. Okay, so it's added a lot of color and punch and contrast, but it's a little bright. Okay, so the beautiful thing about templates is that it's a starting point. Okay, so I'm going to show you the before. Just clicking the backslash key on this to see the before and after and holding it down. You can also do the before and after slider and do it this way, okay, to give you an idea of what that is doing. So overall, I really like the effect and what it is doing to the image, but I want to tweak it a little bit. So once you find the template that you like the best, just click over to Edit. Okay? If you want to skip templates altogether and you want to get there faster to edit and do it all yourself, you can also just click D on your keyboard and it will take you into develop or the process mode. Right? Now you'll see that the template that I've chosen is mentioned down at the bottom here. Right? You can do a couple of things with that now. You can add this to your favorites by clicking the little heart. So it'll be easier to get back to it again later if you know that you like this one. And you can also just dial it down. So the neat thing about that is that what dialing it down does is all of the effects that are being applied, all of the filters are being sort of lowered into a more subtle approach overall. So if you like it, but it's just too much color or it's just too much overall, just dial it down and it scales everything back. So it's really great. I'm going to leave it all the way up at 100%, and I'm going to go through one by one and take a look at what filters that's applied and apply a little bit more or tweak them to my liking. Okay, so the first thing you want to notice is that how you could find the ones that have been applied, they now have a little dot beside them. Okay, so if you've used Luminar 4 or older versions, they were sort of highlighted with white. Now you'll just see a little dot here. So it's a bit more subtle, but they still are indicating which of the things have been applied. So here you can see there's some color tint applied, and that's about it. So I'm going to leave that one. I'm going to look at Enhance. So AI Enhance is another great tool, or Accent AI, because you could say, I want to apply this, and it's a smart sort of contrast. You'll see that it's pumping up the color, also some sharpness. It does a really great job overall. And when you're sort of copying and pasting settings from one to another, it's adaptive, meaning that the AI on this image might be slightly different on another one. So I'm going to dial this down just a tiny bit. And the other thing I'm going to check, color looks like it's okay. I don't think there's a lot being applied there. The landscape one. So the landscape one, they've applied golden hour with that template. And you can see what it's doing is it's really kind of punching up the color in the trees, which I like. So I'm going to use that, but maybe just dial it down a tiny bit as well. So slightly less enhancements there. Now the other one that's being applied, there's some optics. If you've used Luminar 4 before, you'll recognize these side panels are the same. So we've got the Essentials, which is where I would recommend you start. Creative to add different looks and things. Portrait for people photos. And Pro for a little bit more advanced tools. Under the Professional panel, there's Optics. And I usually like to check off these two here, so I can get rid of distortion and chromatic aberration, which are sort of inherent in most cameras and lenses. And you can do things like defringe and get rid of vignettes if you have any cutoff on the edge of your pictures. Okay, so this is a good one to apply, and it will apply sort of auto, again, if you copy and paste from one image to another. Color harmony. Okay, this one is adding a nice color warmth as well, but I think maybe it's going a little bit too far. So again, I'm just going to scale it down ever so slightly. I like my effects a bit more subtle than what often they are applied with templates or presets of any kind. So I'll just go and scale them back a tiny bit. And probably what I'm going to do is save a new version of this once I have finished editing. I'm going to hop back to Essentials here, and I'm going to add a vignette. So vignette is down the bottom, and I'm not even going to worry about where it's placed right now. I'm just going to make it real dark. This is a little tip or trick for you. If you make it real dark and then turn the feather down to 0, what happens is you get a very hard edge of the vignette like this, a hard edge. Then you can adjust the shape, right? Or you can adjust the size, and you can see where it's actually going on your image. And then you can move the placement around. This is something I love about Luminar, is that I'm not stuck to having the vignette from the edges. So I'm going to just darken like that, because I want to have sort of these other areas and focus on the light that's on this tree and the building, right? So then I'll just put my feather back and then lighten the effect a little bit. Okay, so I go to the extreme to get the placement right, and then I can actually just dial it down to where I want it, or up where I want it. All right, let's take another before and after look. It's good to stop and see where you're at from the beginning to where you are now, and see if you've gone too far anywhere or if you need to go farther, okay? The only other thing that I'm going to do to this image is I might darken it just a tiny little bit here. I'm just going to pull the exposure down. And what that does is it brings a highlight more to the tree and the light on the building, and brings everything else sort of in the background a bit. And if I wanted a bit more contrast, Smart Contrast is a really great slider to use as well. And that's under the light panel. The last thing I want to do here is Composition AI. Now, this is a new tool inside of Luminar AI that will analyze your image and actually suggest cropping for you. You can also do things under this perspective panel here for correcting the tilt, which I may do. So if you just click on that, you see how it straightened the building, which is great. You can also correct for a perspective, like distortion, if you're looking up at a building. And this one is not too bad because I've shot it sort of from far away. But if you're looking straight up a building, you get more of that distortion. And lastly, if you just click on the Composition AI button, it's going to give you a suggested cropping. So let's see how close it comes to what I originally did with this image on my own. So I'm just going to hit Enter to accept it. And then let's look at that one compared to the one that I did. Pretty similar. This one looks like it's not quite cropped as much. This one's cropped in a little bit more, but it's pretty close. Okay, so it get rid of a lot of the foreground that really wasn't relevant, and a lot of the stuff on the top, and it was very, very similar to how I cropped it myself. Now, you might not always get a crop that you like, but you can move it around. So if you use the suggested crop and you don't like it, you're welcome to adjust it. Like maybe I'm gonna just open it a little bit more like that. Perfect. So very quickly, using the template, a few tweaks, and then just the Composition AI, I've gone from this image to this image. One last thing I'm going to show you in the Pro panel for this one is the dodge and burn. But before I do that, I'm going to save this template again. So notice now at the bottom, it says that it's the name of the template and it says edited. So I'm actually going to just save it, and I'll show you where those show up. So if you want to get to your own templates, you can just go back to templates, and this little star up here is your own collection. Okay, so these are ones that you might have purchased or ones that you favorited. Okay, so remember I favorited that one earlier, and there's a few more in there, and ones that you've saved or edited yourself. Okay, so now you can see that I've just edited this one here, and I did that one previously earlier today, so you can see I've got a couple of them. And you can easily rename them, or you can even delete them if you've got duplicates. So to finish this image up, I did the save of the template before I did this because I didn't want to save this part of it. So I want to do a little bit of what's called dodging and burning to darken certain areas of the picture. So I'm going to choose the dodge and burn filter under professional, choose darken, and then I'm just going to lower the strength to about 20 and get a fairly large brush. You can increase the brush size with this slider, or you can use the square bracket keys like this. And I'm using shift bracket to lower sort of the feathering amount as well. right? So if you want a harder edge, you just increase this one here. So I'm hitting shift and the square brackets up and down. Okay, so what's going to happen is when I paint here, when I click here, it's going to darken the areas that I'm clicking, right? So I want to darken this bottom area quite a bit, and maybe even this bush over here on the side, because I want to bring more of the focus to the building itself. And let's go on the top. You can make the brush. That's why I use the keyboard shortcuts, because I can make my brush bigger and smaller real fast with the keyboard, as opposed to having to go back to the mouse and clicking that. Okay, so I'm making these real dark, just like that. And I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so now I overpainted a little bit on the side of the tree here, so I can choose erase, and it erases what I've painted, or I could go back to lighten. But I think that the erase works better because it goes back where it was before, right? And I'll just get in here like that. When you're done with dodge and burn, you just close it and it applies, right? Another cool thing about the dodge and burn filter is you'll see there's the overall amount. So if I thought, oh no, I've gone too far, you can literally just scale the whole thing back again. And you can see it's just lightening everything that I just painted. But I think I did a pretty good job, so I'm going to leave it most of the way up. That's why I did it here as opposed to saving it in the template, because the dodging and burning is very specific to this image, right? I might even go and do a little bit more. You can get really small and get into some of these little areas in here, right? What I'm trying to do is just get anything that is distracting and taking the eye away from where I want people to look, which is the light on the building and the tree. So anything like that. Even these branches here that are a little bit bright, I can darken those. Now, something like this over here on the corner, I would probably use the erase filter. And that is a new one. You can find that under Essentials, right? And the erase filter works really well. So what you want to do when it opens up is you want to choose Select, and then you can increase your brush size or decrease it with the keyboard shortcuts again. Okay? And then just click where you want to erase. And I'm just going to do that one little spot there, maybe this one, and maybe this one. And then once you've sort of highlighted the spot parts you want to erase, you click Erase, and then watch it do its magic. It's applying, and boom, all the spots are gone. So that was pretty quick and easy. Now, I would probably zoom in. I'm only looking at this image at 47%. I would zoom in to 100% and move around and do those a little bit more critically, but I'm trying to do a fast edit for you here today. So now I'm really happy with this image. Let's look again one more time at the previous version that I've edited. Oh, I have to get out of the erase tool first. That's reminding me. So just click it to close it. So now let's take a look at the other image that I did previously. So it's a little bit looser cropping, a little bit cooler color balance, but I actually kind of like this one better. Okay, so I was able to get really, really close very quickly. Going back to the main gallery here, I've got a few other images that I shot of this same sort of pagoda or temple here in Japan. So remember, I saved this as my own template. So I'm going to apply it. Again, that's under templates, under the little star, my collection, and under my user templates. So that was the fast fix. So I'm just going to click it and see what I get. So now notice it did apply the cropping as well. And I'm going to just try and tweak this a little bit. But overall, look at the before and after, how quickly and easily that was replicated. And I can just do a couple of little tweaks with the composition just to check that everything is straight. We'll straighten it. We'll do the composition AI. Okay, now it's doing a pretty good job there. I don't want to cut the little duck off in the water, and I want to make sure that I keep the top of the roof. So I'm just going to expand my crop a little bit. Okay, and I could probably change it to free if I want to just have a little bit more free cropping, a little more space in the water. And other than that, we're pretty good. So I might do the same thing here and do a little dodge and burn to darken a few areas, but all I did was a template, click, and a quick recrop, and we've gone from that to that using the template that I created. I'm just going to show you a couple other things that you need to know about. I mentioned already making favorites. If you want to, you can also copy and paste your settings. So if we like that setting, I can do right click and choose adjustments, copy, or you can use Command or Control C. And then we're going to try the same thing, Command or Control V, or you can use the mouse, right click, paste adjustments. And very quickly, we've done the same thing with this image. Before, after. So you see that it's also applying the lens distortion corrections. And if I want to tweak it a little bit more, I can go in and adjust any of the settings where I see the dot, right? Including the dodge and burn, and so on. But it allows you to really quickly, and I'm just going to click G, which takes me back to gallery or catalog. I can really quickly apply these kinds of edits. Now this is one that I've edited separately as well. So just to give you another idea of what's possible using Luminar AI. So I've really punched up the color here. I've added something called mood in the creative panel and a sunburst using the sun rays to go from this one to this one. Another image that was a little bit overexposed, we were shooting this in Kyoto and literally the light on their faces just from their cell phones. So the overall image was a little bit overexposed. So I wanted to kind of pull back some detail, but there's not a lot there. So I went with something a bit moodier, and this was easy to do in Luminar as well, using the mood in the creative panel. And also I did a different version and turned it into a very dramatic black and white and changed it to a night sky. Right? So you can see that you can do some really creative things. And this is where I use one of the sky images that you saw me import earlier. Let's do one more from the beginning. So another image that I photographed in Japan. Let's start with the templates again, and let's see what it suggests. So now it is suggesting something called the big city lights, urban style, or big screen, which is a cinematic collection. So let's start with big city lights. And literally, I'm just going to scroll through them and see which of them appeals to me the most. Right off the bat, look at that. The first one, look at how much color comes out from that. That is, the original is kind of blah. That looks fantastic. So I like the first one. This one is kind of a muted look, very different. Black and white, sort of a color cross-processing. Ooh, street theater is kind of nice. The other thing that happens with these templates, I find, is that it gives me ideas for how I might edit this image that I might not have considered otherwise. Something that, like, I might have not have done a cross-processed look on this. I might not have done a black and white or a faded look because it's so colorful. I think I do want to stay with something that has the color. Now this is interesting because I think it's adding some fog in there, but I like the color of the other one better. So I'm going to go back to the first one. We like this frosty one, or this one here, one of these two. Let's go with frosty. Okay, so it's really crisp, and moving into the edit, I can adjust any of the ones like I did before, but the only one I'm going to add is that Atmosphere AI. So this is another new one under the creative panel. Okay. And don't worry if I'm going too fast here. This is really just an overview of what you can do and sort of quick where to find things. I'm going to be going into more detail in some future videos about each of the individual sort of panels and what all of the different tools do. Okay, so this is just a really quick what's possible. Inside this new one, the Atmosphere AI, you can add fog, layered fog, mist, or haze. So I'm going to add some layered fog, and I want to show you something really cool. So if I add this fog here, you see it's sort of creating the fog in the middle of the picture. It does a 3D rendering and recognizes distances in your image. Okay, so if I increase the depth, you notice that the fog looks like it's coming forward. Right? Let's try the regular fog. Okay, so regular fog is a little brighter. So it's taking up more of the image. I like the layered fog. Let's try mist. But you could see what that other template was doing, right? You could see that that's what it was adding. Let's just lower the lightness a little bit. So it looks like as it goes into the distance, we're creating this sort of really cool fog that's happening, coming from there, like this mystical fog, right? Try them all out. I encourage you to push the sliders to the max. See what they do at the max and then come back somewhere in the middle, right? So I'm not going to go crazy with this one, right? Then it looks like I can't see anything, but that might be cool for a different image. And let's just put it somewhere about there. Awesome. So really quickly from that to that with a template and just some added fog. The last thing I'm going to do to this image is just to correct the optics for that lens distortion. Remember, that's under the Pro panel. And do a little crop. So remember, the crop tool, you can correct for tilt if you feel that your image is crooked. So I want to just make sure my verticals and horizontals are straight up and down. And I can attempt the perspective control, and let's see what that does. But if I'm not happy with what it does, I can just reset it and do it manually. Okay, so you can see what it's done here. I have to apply it before I can do a before and after. Okay, so you can see it's correcting the up and down so that the up and down lines are not converging at the top. Okay, so it looks like it's sort of leaning back here, right, versus straighter. Is one right or wrong? It's totally up to you. I generally don't correct that much, so I'm actually going to undo that and just correct the tilt. And if I want to just do it a bit more subtly, I can just correct the verticals myself using these sliders at the bottom to the degree that I want. So I'm just going to do a very slight vertical correction because it does sort of do a nice job on the sides, and I don't have those columns sort of going out of the frame like they were originally. So I'm going to go about there. I think that's pretty good. You can notice in here that smart contrast has already been applied. I'm just going to take it a bit farther, and I'm probably going to add a little more vignette. You can see that there is a vignette. Remember my trick, feather to 0, turn it all the way down, and I'm just going to make it smaller so that it really gets those edges. So I want the edges to be quite dark so that we focus in on that sort of mystical bit in the center. And I might even darken the whole image a little bit as well. Just like that. I wanted to have this almost spooky, ghost-like feeling, which I think it has now. So I wasn't intending to do that, but because of some of the things that happened with the templates, it gave me that idea of adding that sort of ghostliness. And I might even go a little bit farther and darken it even a bit more. Here we go. Nice and contrasty. Now it's very sort of ghostly and magical. Once again, if I enjoy this preset and I want to save it, I certainly can do that. And it's then saved into my own templates. So if I want to apply it to another image, let's see how it goes on this one. So same sort of temple. This was the frosty one, and I've edited that. It may do a weird crop or distortion because it's going to apply the same thing. Did a pretty nice job. So you notice how it's still that atmosphere, the fog is applied in the middle, and I can go and adjust any of those things as I see fit. If I want more contrast or if I want more color, saturation, and so on. I hope this video has given you some really good ideas on how to get started and how to use Luminar AI for your images. Start by adding some images, play around with the templates, and tweak to your liking. Until next time, when I have a new Luminar AI tutorial for you, take care and have fun with Luminar AI and your images.